I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. And this is Currents. Is the man in white really green? We'll look at what Pope Benedict has to say about the environment.
Holy Father speaks of a covenant between human beings and the environment.
Sometimes your calling may take you to places you never imagined. A new film examines that.
To see people living in an area where there was literally nothing, it throws one back.
And what's so funny about religion? These three will tell you.
The original idea was to have a three-comic show, a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian, but we couldn't find any Christian comedians.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. The crisis along the Gulf Coast is now rippling beyond the shoreline and right into people's lives. The Archdiocese of New Orleans reports more than 4,000 people affected by the devastating oil spill. Well, they have received assistance through Catholic Charities, but that is only the beginning of an environmental and economic disaster that could last for years.
And its full effect could be severe. As one professor put it, the oil now coming ashore is the very worst case scenario for wildlife. Against this backdrop, last week the American Bible Society looked at environmental issues through a very particular lens, the teaching of Pope Benedict.
Certainly the relationship between mankind and the natural environment is one of the great questions of our age. It is also one of the most controversial. What is nature? Why do we care about it? What is the human being's place in the natural world? These questions are not idle philosophical problems, because the answers we give are bound to shape both our science and our politics towards the environment.
I'm supposed to speak about Benedict XVI and what he's bringing to the environmental debate, but I think that he's bringing what other popes and basically the Catholic Church had already inside. For me, understanding the word destiny, common destiny, solidarity, that was the key of everything. As Benedict says, that the Church can give something to this environmental debate. The Church is an expert in humanity. And so I need to go to the deepest roots of my humanity and understand who am I and what's my destiny.
When you read, certainly the present Pope, as well as John Paul II, when you read the Church's declarations on these matters, they're not just topics. No. The Church has felt that the raising of this issue is a dramatic challenge to the reality of how we understand faith itself. In the document, if you want to cultivate peace, protect creation, the Holy Father speaks of a covenant between human beings and the environment. A covenant that should mirror the creative love of God.
I'm looking to a beautiful world, to beautiful mountains, and I'm trying to understand not just a way to preserve all these things, but how do relate with me. I can have solidarity with nature, I can have solidarity with the stars, with the moon, with the animals, with my family, with everybody. I can feel part of the same plan, of the same destiny, and from the same love.
So as you see, this is how this concern for environmental disaster is not just a section of the Church's teaching, but it goes to the very heart of the Christian faith.
What do they have in common, Christianity and ecology? Christianity is the announcement of Christ with us, and ecology is the announcement of the real dangers we are facing.
What is at stake in the present development of environmental solidarity? What is at stake in getting it right is the reality of Jesus Christ.
And we do have much more on our website about what the Church is doing to help in the Gulf Coast region with those affected by the spill. Just go to currentsny.net.
But stay tuned. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including the President and the Vatican seeing eye to eye. We'll tell you what it's all about. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up just a bit later, 3 religions and a lot of laughs. We'll explain.
But first, let's turn to the day's headlines. The White House and congressional Democrats reached a compromise this week on speeding up the process of repealing the ban on gays serving openly in the military. The Pentagon is currently studying how the military would handle a repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but the results will not be ready until December. The compromise allows the House and Senate to vote on a repeal as soon as possible, but it would not take effect until after the military study is complete. Word of the compromise, however, did not sit well with Tony Perkins. He's the head of the conservative Christian group, the Family Research Council. Perkins called the compromise a backroom deal and said it amounts to a political charade. Earlier this year, a group of 40 retired military chaplains said they were opposed to a repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and recent polls show mixed feelings among the American public. A Family Research Council Zogby poll found a majority of Americans want the military, not Congress, to decide the issue, while a CNN opinion research poll found 78% believe that gays and lesbians should be allowed to serve openly. Well, the Obama administration sided with the Vatican this week in an Oregon lawsuit on clergy sex abuse. The lawsuit was filed in 2002 on behalf of a man who says he was abused in the 1960s. The Holy See is named as defendant in the suit, but the U.S. Solicitor General's office wrote a brief to the Supreme Court arguing that a lower court overstepped its bounds by allowing the case to go forward. The administration said the priest's abuse did not occur within the scope of his employment, so his employer, the Vatican, should not be held liable for his actions. And a leading Italian bishop announced Tuesday that 100 cases of clerical sex abuse have led to canonical procedures and trials in that country in the last 10 years. Bishop Mariano Crociata told reporters the church has cooperated with the police, but did not say how many of the cases were reported to authorities or how many of the priests were removed from the ministry.
Well, the year for priests will soon be nothing but a memory, but before it comes to an end, Pope Benedict had some words of encouragement for priests and the faithful. During his general audience today, the pontiff called on priests to govern and guide with the authority of Christ, and not their own.
The spiritual authority conferred in holy orders should be matched by the priest's interior fidelity to his pastoral mission and his personal readiness to follow obediently the lead of Christ. Understood in the light of faith, this authority, while involving the exercise of power, remains a service to the building up of the Church in holiness, unity, and truth.
The Pope also called on believers to support priests in their task of bringing people closer to God. Benedict will mark the end of the year for priests with a special Mass at the Vatican on June 11th. And back here in this country, vandals struck a Catholic school in California this week. Parents and teachers say they are shocked by what the criminals left behind. As Juan Fernandez reports, school officials say it was more than just a mess, it was an attack on the Catholic faith.
This is what administrators at the Santa Rosa de Lima Catholic School discovered this morning. Extensive damage, all caused by vandals. Most of it has been cleaned up, but you can still see a lot was left behind, like butter and flour on the auditorium drapes.
And it was really a mess for all the things they dropped in the floor and the walls and the windows.
Father David Velasquez says security cameras captured two men breaking in through a kitchen window. It's where most of the damage took place. Maywood Police provided us with these pictures. In one, you can clearly see the numbers 666 written out in what appears to be ketchup on the kitchen counter. In another, the kitchen drawers and all their contents were thrown to the floor. This crucifix was set on fire, then left on the stovetop, which was later covered in flour. And in this last photo, a knife was stabbed into the face of the Virgin of Guadalupe.
For us, it was really sad. For the people, the community who come to help us clean, I can feel that sadness spirit, and it was the situation, very sad situation for us.
Volunteers helped Father Velasquez clean up. Neighbors tell us they can't believe someone could do this to their neighborhood church and school. Police now have the tape that captured the two men vandalizing the school's kitchen for almost an hour and a half.
The police now is checking, and well, we hope that some people they saw something in the night can help in this situation.
That is Juan Fernandez reporting.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents coming up.
Just ahead, it's been a long journey for this local filmmaker. I'll talk to the director of The Calling.
It documents in a very personal and intimate way their embracing of Catholic religious life.
Welcome back. Well, spring is film festival season. We had the chance to, I did anyway, go to the Tribeca Film Festival here in New York City earlier this month, and it was really a lot of fun and a good time to meet some filmmakers and also see some really great films. They also just wrapped up the splashiest and the most famous festival in the world over in France. That's in Cannes, of course. But close to home, yet another celebration of film is just about to get underway, the 5th annual Staten Island Film Festival.
Indeed it is, and one film unspooling there has generated a lot of excitement and praise all along the festival circuit. Part of what makes it so unusual is its subject matter, vocations, and how one group of Catholics is living its vocation in Peru. The film is The Calling. Academy Award-winning documentarian Barbara Koppel has called it brilliant, a poetic and spiritual meditation. You're about to get a glimpse at what all the excitement is about as I begin a conversation with the movie's director, David Rengeli. David, thanks so much for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Well, this is a film that has been very successful so far in the film festival circuit. It's something that's been reaching a lot of people so far as well. Tell our viewers, those who might not know about it, who might not have heard anything about The Calling, what it's about.
The Calling is a documentary that follows 3 individuals who are members of a newly forming Catholic religious community called the Family of Jesus Healer. And it documents in a very personal and intimate way their embracing of Catholic religious life. It shows the ways in which this decision or this call to follow Christ is changing them, but it also goes beyond their personal experiences and incorporates what is happening with their families as well, in terms of how the families are responding to how this particular individual is embracing the faith in this very intimate, personal way.
Okay, well, very good. Now, this takes place in Peru, I believe, right?
Well, the community was originally founded in the Diocese of St. Petersburg, and when I started documenting them, it was December of 2002, a long, long time ago, and I started filming them in Tampa.
Right.
At the time, they were working in Ybor City, which is a northern sort of section of Tampa, which has a lot of, poverty, a lot of drug addiction, a lot of alcohol, a lot of children at risk. And they were doing a lot of wonderful work in this very poor community, helping these populations. And for the most part, I felt when I started documenting them that the film was going to take place in and around this area.
Right.
The priest who founded the community, however, Father Philip Scott, is a native Peruvian. And prior to my documenting them, they were already beginning a conversation about going back to his home country to help the poor there. So that began the process of the film taking place in 2 settings, if you will, Tampa, Florida, and then Lima, Peru.
Gotcha. And Peru being a very, I don't want to say desolate, but I guess this is kind of desolate setting for this. I mean, it is, especially from what I've seen, and as I've told you before, I haven't been able to see the entire film. I've listened to a couple of the interviews that you've done. I've also seen the trailer and read some about the film as well. From what I can see there, it is just a very, very poor area where they're ministering now.
Yeah, I mean, there are areas of Peru, and by and large, where I was Lima, which is the capital, and then about 20 or 30 minutes outside of Lima where this community had their mission house and where they were working with the poor. There are areas that are very beautiful. There are areas that are very beautiful that were literally a stone's throw away from this community called El Vallecito, where the Family of Jesus Healer was ministering to the poor. The contrast between rich and poor, I discovered when I was in Peru, is very close. In some ways. And the desolation that exists in places like Vallecito is partly due because of the socio-political system, but it's also due to climate. I mean, the climate in this area of Peru changed drastically 150, 200 years ago, and it became very arid. water is a major, major concern in places like this, as you could probably see from the footage, because there's literally no greenery.
Yeah.
And when I first went to El Vallecito and the community took me there, it was like a lunar landscape to me. And the first words out of my mouth were, my God, because I couldn't imagine how people could live in a place like this. Growing up in a place like New York City, you know, in and around the city, you have, you know, the Catskill Mountains, you have the ocean, you have all this beauty and abundance around you. To see people living in an area where there was literally nothing, it throws one back.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, you know, obviously they had a lot to deal with in a place like El Vallecito, and over the course of the film, we see how they develop strategies to try and help those who are in need in this area of Peru.
Right. Well, we'll save the rest of our conversation for next time. We'll talk a lot more about the film. We'll talk a little bit more about your inspiration for it, and about vocations in general, and you know, people sort of discerning their callings as well. David, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Peru is a long way from Florida, and you know, this is one of those things where he thought he was filming one thing and ended up filming something totally different, because that group of people answered that call to go to Peru. And so he spent quite a bit of time there with them as well, in a very, very poor area in another part of the globe.
Well, kudos to him for actually telling the story that's present, as opposed to trying to force a story that isn't. As a reporter, you know, oftentimes we're sent out on assignments, not necessarily here at Currents, but in other places where there really isn't the story that you initially were going on, but there was another story out there, and that's obviously the case here. And you know, it's incredible to me that it's obviously being filmed and shared in an artistic way, because that's its whole other thing, but the fact that it is focusing on this issue of poverty and of the calling of the people that are helping is really great. And it's also very important that it's done in a way that is storytelling, so people can relate to it, and perhaps then, I would think, do something about it if they could help too.
Yeah, and audiences, of course, have been very responsive to it. It's won awards at film festivals, and it's been you know, something that's been very successful so far. So the audiences are enjoying it. Now, the film, as we mentioned, it will be at the Staten Island Film Festival coming up next week, June 3rd and the 4th. And I've also written more about that, and how you can get your tickets over at our blog. Just go to currentsny.net, click on Riding the Wave when you get there. Now, in the meantime, we'll have more of my conversation with David Rangel. It'll be part 2 tomorrow. He'll offer some insight into what the calling has to say to all of us, no matter what your calling might be.
Sounds good. We look forward to that. But for now, stay with us. There's much more Currents still to come. When we return, a new tour that mixes humor and faith.
We're convinced that if people can laugh together, it's really hard to hate each other.
Okay, have you heard the one about the minister, the rabbi, and the Muslim who walked into a nightclub? All right. It's not actually a joke. This really isn't a joke. It's actually the real life story of 3 religious leaders who have decided that, you know, if you want to heal the world, laughter really is the best medicine.
It is the one language that we all do speak, right? Well, the 3 are now sharing stages all around the country, looking at the lighter side of faith and discovering that what divides us isn't as important as what unites us. And one of those things is laughter. CNN's Richard Roth caught up with the trio in the middle of their comedy tour.
Take one Baptist minister who uses humor in sermons and stand-up.
Police said the chair was powered by a converted lawnmower and had a stereo and a cup holder.
Add a part-time rabbi, full-time comic.
Single Jewish woman seeks single Jewish man with dead mother.
And a Muslim lawyer turned comedian.
As a Muslim, I get sick and tired of having to apologize for every single wacko who does something in the name of Islam. Like, maybe the explanation is he's just crazy.
3 people, 3 faiths, making America laugh and think.
We called it the Laugh in Peace Tour for a reason, because it's become our belief, based on real data and real information and real people coming to us after shows, that, you know, we're convinced that if people can laugh together, it's really hard to hate each other.
Would hope that we are all standing hand in hand trying to figure out a way to make this world a little better place, and we're hoping that humor is the first step to do that.
The original idea was to have a 3-comic show, a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian, but we couldn't find any Christian comedians.
These days, making fun of religion can have serious consequences. However, the comics believe joking with religion can often help cultural understanding. In a two-man appearance in a synagogue, the rabbi welcomes the Muslim comic by unexpectedly frisking him.
Good to go. That's right. I had so many Jewish friends from childhood. Now that we're all grown up, I have to tell them I turned out to be more Jewish than half you guys. I got the beard going, I keep strictly kosher, and I went to law school.
As we cross the state line, Vermont's Muslim population doubled.
So put your hands together one more time for my dear, dear friend, Rabbi Bob Alpert.
The rabbi's dear friend was only too happy to return the security favor.
I feel like a lot of people are afraid to make fun of religion.
Jamie Kilstein, performing in a Manhattan comedy club, is definitely not one of them.
The sad part is there is some beautiful stuff in the Bible. I'm not trying to make fun of religion as much as I'm trying to stick up for people who are being oppressed by religion. So much violence is caused from religious oppression. There are still parts of the Middle East where if you're a woman, you can be stoned to death for adultery. And the people who do this say they're doing this because the Quran told them to. Now, I've read the Quran. I've skimmed the Quran. I haven't read the Quran. But you are a rational human being who is of the Muslim faith, and you're going to hear me crack a joke on the Quran, but at the same time, you're also going to hear an American saying that we need to stop going over there and pursuing an imperialistic agenda.
I asked this Muslim comic, is Islam hypersensitive to criticism?
Nowadays, you find a lot of Muslims get very upset because they also feel that Islam is being mistreated in a way that other religions are not. In other words, they have this almost siege mentality, like they're out to get us.
Let me just share with you the pain of being a stand-up comedian in seminary. Oh, Lord.
Every comedian sets their own limits.
My whole shtick is to try to bring us together, not tear us apart.
I think that it's just a matter of time before we begin to see a much more homogenizing sense of comedic sensibilities. And stand-up, in many ways, is becoming a global language.
We think there could be healing between Jews and Muslims and Christians.
Muslims and Christians and Jews.
Wait. No, Christians? Hello? Muslims and Jews.
That's really cute. It reminds me of this movie at Tribeca Film Festival that I went to earlier this month. It's called The Infidel, and it's a humorous movie. It's a comedy, and it's about a guy who was raised as a Muslim and lives his life as a Muslim, but finds out that he was adopted and that he's really Jewish.
Oh, yeah.
And so he has to go through all this life-changing thing about, what does it mean to then be a Jew and question his own faith, and that's what it reminds me of a lot. And again, the humor, that's the part of it that really shows the similarities more than anything.
Yeah, and an interesting note, too, about this trio of performers and religious performers. Susan Sparks, who is the pastor, actually she's a Baptist minister, and she is a pastor here in New York City. She's actually at Madison Avenue Baptist Church on the Upper East Side. So she's a local gal. Not originally, as you can probably tell from the accent, not originally from New York. She's from somewhere down my neck of the woods, as we would say, but she's here in New York now as a Baptist minister. So interesting note there, but having a lot of fun and, making light of a subject that a lot of people won't make light of, but at the same time, still taking it very seriously and still trying to make a difference in people's lives and their perceptions of people who are different from the way that they are. So.
Right, and similar.
Yeah, and yes, that's the thing, is you find out you have a lot more in common.
The beard in law school, that was so funny.
Than you thought, right.
Anyway, well, that is it for tonight. We leave you on a very light note. Coming up tomorrow, Los Angeles welcomes the man who will be its next Archbishop. It is an historic moment for that city and for Hispanic Americans all around the country and the world. Rocco Palmo is covering that event in Los Angeles, and he will be joining us.
In the meantime, though, remember you can always watch us online. We're over at currentsny.net. Check out our Facebook page as well. In the meantime, I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great night.